Lisa Jacques. As a child, Lisa grew up in a paranormally active home. She attended her first spiritualist church in 1998, which happened to be the 150th anniversary year of modern spiritualism. She knew right away she was a spiritualist, and because of her Pentecostal background, she describes herself as a Christian spiritualist. She has attended all 3 spiritualist churches in Rochester over the last 27 years. By day, Lisa owns and operates Park Ave Pets on Monroe Avenue, so if you have a pet, you should go there, right? And this November marks the beginning of its 30th year in business. And just as a little plug, we are going to have a pet healing day in July. We haven't set exactly the date yet, but we will. And it will be at Park Ave Pets because she offered, or I asked and she said yes. So, Lisa.
Okay. I'm gonna get Kleenex because my nose is running. And this is my first day wearing high heels in 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Which means my ankle is starting to work, which is a miracle.
Oh, yeah.
I tried it last spring when I wore a sundress and almost killed myself and thought, I'm gonna break my leg again. So, I haven't killed myself today.
Yay.
I can tell I'm hot. All right, so Dale asked me to speak this month, and it was a total honor. Thank you very much. She told me it's the birth month of modern spiritualism and Women's History Month, and she usually combines those two, so here I go. I'm going to try it. If you have never heard me speak, I meander all over the place, but then I come back to my point and you see why I said all those random things I said. Our government and the world are crazy right now. People are getting angry about it or they're getting depressed, but we have so much power to create a fabulous world, and that is what I want to speak about today. I want to start first, with a story that my ex-husband told me. He used to troubleshoot for a big company, and they sent him all around the country to fix problems. And he arrived in a new office, and he said there was a woman in this office that he considered downright homely. She had very unattractive features, but the men in the office all seemed incredibly attracted to her. And he didn't understand this until he worked with her. And the more he worked with her, the more he found her very physically attractive. And as I'm listening to him, I'm thinking it's because you see her energy and you see her soul, and her soul is beautiful and her energy is beautiful, so you're finding her beautiful. But I never got a chance to say any of that because he continued with the story. And he said eventually she told him that she was raised by her father. She does not even remember her mother. And every day her father would tell her how beautiful she was and how she looked just like her mother, who was a very beautiful woman. And she grew up believing she was very beautiful because, you believe your parents. Psychologists say that your beliefs act as a mirror, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy where your internal thoughts and expectations are reflected in your external reality. And through confirmation bias and cognitive filtering, your brain subconsciously validates your deeply held beliefs, making your actions and experiences match your inner world. It explains why she thought that he found her attractive, but it doesn't exactly explain why he found her attractive. A study was done in Princeton that explains this. Scientists placed a plant in the corner of a closed room, no windows. Then they installed a single light bulb, and they attached that light bulb to a random oscillator that oscillated the bulb's light into each of the 4 corners randomly of that room. Over time, the light's oscillation hovered around the one corner that contained the plant. So if a plant can control and manipulate reality in its favor, I'm sure we can too. More than 100 years ago, women in America could not vote, and many were angry about this. We often hear that anger turned inward is depression. Women could have been depressed about living as an oppressed people, but instead, many women use their anger as a motivating force for change. I love that because when I am angry, everything around me had better change.
Amen.
Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, the acronym spells MADD, M-A-D-D, started by Candy Lightner, an angry mother who lost her daughter to a repeat offender drunk driver. She could have been horribly depressed for the rest of her life over her loss. Instead, she turned her anger into action. She lobbied for change, stronger drunk driving laws, TV ad campaigns that said don't drink and drive. She got the drinking age raised to 21. She created the entire designated driver idea. Her anger at an injustice changed the world. I'm gonna go backwards in time again. 1871, Margaret Knight was inventing the first machine to make a flat-bottomed paper bag. We all use them. Before this, they were envelope paper bags that didn't hold a whole lot. A man saw what she was doing and he stole the idea and he filed for a patent for her machine in his name. She obviously was angry. She took him to court along with her notes, her drawings, citing every stage of development. The thief's only evidence that he came up with the idea was, she's a woman. She couldn't possibly have created such an intricate machine. The courts in 1871 awarded the patent to Margaret. Eventually, she had 27 patents in her name. Many were safety devices for factory machinery. She is another woman who changed the world, probably saved lives, just like Candy Lightner. My grandmother owned her own business. My mother owned her own business. My ex-husband's grandmother owned her own business. Deb's great-grandmother owned one of the first female-owned printing businesses in America. I can assure you that none of the women I have mentioned ever asked anyone for permission for what they did. If you have to ask someone for permission, then they have absolute control over you. They control what you can do and what you cannot do. You never ask for permission. That is my motto. You ask for forgiveness. Really? I wasn't supposed to do that? I'm so sorry.
Not.
Yeah, whatever. Oh. In 1845 and 1846, Andrew Jackson Davis was dictating an 804-page book through trance mediumship. Modern spiritualism hadn't even started yet. It didn't even start until the Fox sisters in 1848. Kabbalah wisdom says that everything on this plane was created in the 99% realm of endless light, the heavenly plane, the ethers. Our brain is just an antenna that receives the signals. Our brain isn't actually doing the creation. So if we are just downloading knowledge and ideas from the heavens and then manifesting or creating them in this realm, you would think that as spiritualists who believe strongly in connecting to the other side, that we would all be incredibly successful. I had to think of times when I felt divinely, I'm not successful. I had to think of times when I felt divinely guided or pushed or actually heard words in my head directing me to do something. And if it had a positive outcome. And this is what I came up with. There are lots of them. The first time I remember being pushed to do something way outside my comfort zone, I was 12 years old. And I knew that that was not coming from inside of me. But I am going to share two of the more recent times that I felt divinely guided to do something. When I knew that the thoughts and ideas were not coming from my head, but from outside of me. About 20 years ago, it was 2005. The city of Rochester decided that all businesses had to pay $100 a year for a permit to be in business. I had been in business 9 years so far, and I had never paid the city $100 to be in business. This permit was called a certificate of use, and it was for businesses under 10,000 square feet. So Wegmans didn't have to comply, Tops didn't have to comply, but all the little locally owned mini marts did. I realized that I could move 3 blocks down Monroe Avenue into Brighton, and I wouldn't have to pay anyone $100 to be in business. I could have left the city, but I decided to fight this instead. The license had to be prominently displayed by the front door of the business. It was to include the business owner's picture, their name, their birth date, their social security number, their home address, and their home phone number. Not only was this prime for identity theft, but especially women-owned businesses, sometimes creepy people walk in and you're so glad they don't know where you live. So after meeting with city representatives, it became very clear that this business permit was only being designed so the city could pull a permit from a business and close any business at any time. So we had meetings with city representatives about this. The Monroe Avenue business owners were basically told that we had nothing to worry about. We were white. They didn't quite say that, but they were really trying to close those Arab-owned mini-marts as a kind of ethnic cleansing of the city. This was 2005, 9/11 happened in 2001, it's 4 years later. So and they wanted to close those black-owned barber shops that were really dealing drugs. With no proof, no trial, and no presumption of innocence, the city was going to take away their livelihood. We suggested instead, why don't you send in an undercover officer to make 3 drug buys, you put the person in jail, and their business is closed. The city said that following due process took too long, this would be faster. Sarah Moriarty from Utter Clutter, I love that woman. If you know her, she is a firecracker. She pointed out to city representatives that between 1933 and 1938, one of the first things the Nazi regime did was close all of the Jewish-owned businesses, and the city was following their blueprint. City officials didn't care about this parallel. So, Sarah Moriarty from Utter Clutter, Patty Parker from Progressive Barbershop, because she's a barbershop and she should be closed down. Myself and a handful of other small business owners, Alex White included, male and female, took the city on. We discovered that locally owned restaurants were being forced to comply, but McDonald's and Burger King were not being forced. Locally owned mini-marts were being forced to comply, but 7-Eleven and Wilson Farms were not. We fought hard for over a year, speaking to city council, on the record at the Speak to Council meetings, news media coverage, pickets, protests, letters to the editor. Every one of us was threatened by city employees. Police showed up at our businesses, neither protecting nor serving, but shaking us down for $100 through intimidation. I found this newsletter, which Alex White and I printed 4 years later in 2009, the newsletter was regarding the slew of city laws that judges had deemed unconstitutional between 2002 and 2009. In it, we wrote this, that in 2005, net officers flanked by police officers were visiting small businesses, demanding the business owners pay the city $100 or get closed down. This $100 was for a piece of paper called a certificate of use, which was a new business license that most businesses had never heard of nor needed before. The new law had just been passed by city council. Business owners stated that such visits demanding $100 would be considered extortion anywhere else in America. At one of the merchant meetings, Lieutenant Chernetsky, I made sure to get his name, asked me if I was going to comply with the C of U law. I said no. He asked me if I owned a home in the city. I said yes. He said, well, let's see what happens to your house. I know. Well, were they going to burn it down? I don't know.
Maybe.
I told him not to threaten me. It just makes me dig my heels in deeper. The police came to my business and Patty's business and Sarah's business in the middle of the day with customers in our shops trying to intimidate us. When I wouldn't fork over $100, they handed me my first $50 ticket for non-compliance. They came back again when customers were in the store. They gave me a ticket for $100. My next ticket was for $500, then $1,000, then another $1,000 ticket, and then another $1,000 ticket. I had $3,650 in fines. My husband was getting very mad at me. The city was now stating that if we didn't pay these fines, they would just go on our property taxes of the commercial property, which we owned. And if we didn't pay our property taxes, the city would take the property for unpaid property taxes. Patty Parker and Sarah Moriarty didn't like their landlords, and they said, fine, give my landlord my fines, I don't care. I was starting to question what I should do, and if this was just my ego pushing against the city. And I try not to use my ego to make decisions. The universe told me no. Who plays better in the news media? Who is the more sympathetic character, white women, Arab immigrants, black men? The fight with the city wasn't about us, it was about the bigger picture, about using our white female privilege to help others. Eventually, through pressure, the city changed the law. It still existed, but there was no picture, no social security number, no birth date, no home address, and a one-time $25 fee. And the city told me that if I complied and paid the $25 fee, all of my fines would just be erased. I had to really think about this, because the law still existed, and they could still pull a permit at any time from anyone. I did comply, but myself and Alex White started a new citywide business association whose sole purpose was to help those being targeted by unjust city laws. And under Duffy and Richards' leadership, this continued for the whole time. The whole time they were in office. In 2008, 3 years later, people came into my store, multiple people, and said, Lisa, you have to help Gitsy's restaurant. This is 3 years after our initial fight. The city's trying to close down Gitsy's. The city wanted to close Gitsy's for points violations. The city wrote a law saying that every time police responded to an address, that address would receive nuisance points. And if an address got enough points, the city would close down that business as a nuisance to society. It happened with women calling for domestic violence in their home. They called too many times, they shut down that property and they have to move. So it punishes the person that was calling the police. And it punishes the landlord who happened to rent to someone who was being abused. So it was a stupid law. It still exists, still on the books. And they still use it. Let's see. One night, a man had come into Gitsy's with a gun and shot at one of their customers. Now, if someone came into my store and shot at one of my customers, I would think I'm the victim and I don't deserve to be punished by the city. I didn't know what I should do to help Gitsy's. And I'd say to the customers, well, what should I do? And they didn't know. It took about a week, but I got the download from the universe telling me exactly what I should do. I didn't want to do it. I wanted someone else to do it. I was supposed to make a petition. I even downloaded the wording. I couldn't find it because it was so well written, I could never write that today. It basically said, we the people believe Gitsy's is the victim and should not be punished. We believe the city's role is to protect its businesses and protect the citizens that utilize those businesses. I was then supposed to place these petitions in businesses around the city for them to collect signatures from their customers. By 2008, Alex White and I had a huge business network. I was then supposed to take these petitions and submit them to the monthly Speak to Council meeting. And this is where citizens are allowed 2 minutes, 2 whole minutes to speak to City Council. They can rant, they can complain, they can make a suggestion. It turns out that the Speak to Council meeting was being held in 7 days. In 7 days, we collected over 1,000 signatures. So I'm in my store with, hundreds of petitions, and I'm trying not to lose any of them. And I'm running out the door to get to this meeting, which starts before my store even closes, so I had someone running the store for me. I'm carrying hundreds of pages of petitions, trying not to drop or lose any of them, and an old friend came into my store that I hadn't seen in years. And I said, I am so sorry, I cannot talk. I am rushing to a city council meeting to present these petitions. I gave him one. I said, here, sign this. I need more signatures. He read it, he signed it, he goes, oh, this is awesome. Did you contact the news media about this? I hadn't even thought of it. I said, no, I don't think anyone else did either. He goes, I know all of them. I'm gonna tell everyone right now what's going on. You go to your meeting. So as I am sitting in council chambers waiting for my turn to speak, every local news station showed up, including WXXI. He told everyone, and every news station turned this into a very positive story about how Gitsy's is a victim of a criminal and the city is punishing the victim instead of the criminal. They interviewed me, and then they interviewed city council members who hadn't known this was going to happen, and they didn't have any prepared statements to back their stand, so they didn't look good, thank God. The universe sent my friend into my store that day on purpose. My friend probably helped Gitsy's more than I did. I have learned that if you are working on behalf of others, the universe really supports you. Things are divinely guided. If you have clear thoughts about what you want, not what you don't want, the universe... Should I wait? Okay. If you have clear thoughts about what you want, not what you don't want, the universe will reflect back your desires, your dreams, your visions, and your goals. I want to read one more thing from a newsletter that I put out in 2012. It says, 4 years after Gitsy's. And Gitsy's did close eventually, but not because the city forced them to close. On June 27th, 2012, a meeting was held between Monroe Avenue business owners, the Southeast Neighborhood Service Center, the City of Rochester, and the RPD. The nuisance point system was discussed and how points were assigned to businesses along Monroe Avenue. Neighborhood Service Center Director Nancy Johns Price stated that numerous businesses along Monroe Avenue have enough points to be closed down. However, the city has not closed any businesses in Southeast Rochester recently. Only businesses outside the Southeast have been closed for points violations. Business owners stated that this only proves that discrimination occurs and that the laws are not being administered equally. Such statistics support Councilman Adam McFadden's moratorium on points in his Southwest neighborhood. He stated that Black, Latino, and Arab-owned businesses were most frequently targeted for closure by the Rochester Neighborhood Service Centers. 2 years later, in 2014, Lovely Warren was sworn in as Rochester's mayor, and all of the problems and all of the injustices just quietly disappeared. They're still in the books, but she did not enforce them. I didn't expect that. But she was a woman and everything disappeared. The new mayor, however, is working for the Duffy Richards people, and we don't know what quite is going to happen. Mother Teresa once said she would never participate in an anti-war rally, but she would participate in a peace rally. You envision what you want, not what you don't want. Affirmations work, but you have to state them positively. You cannot say, I will not eat fattening foods. Instead, you say, I will only eat foods that are healthy and lean. I will only eat lean foods that are healthy for my body. And you cannot be afraid. You have to be fearless, because if you are afraid, you are concentrating on what you don't want to happen. And you are giving power to the worst case scenario. You're thinking about bad things happening, and thus you're manifesting it. My business plan used to be, failure is not an option. I'll figure it out. I'll take the leap. I'll build my wings on the way down. I can figure this out. My business plan should have been, success is inevitable. One quote's worried about failure, the other quote focuses on success. And as spiritualists, we know that we should walk through the day connected to the divine, allowing for, listening to, and being open to guidance and help from those in other realms, heaven, the divine source. I don't believe you have to be a trance medium like Andrew Jackson Davis in order to get divine guidance, or as I call them, downloads. And like the woman who believed she was beautiful, and then everyone else believed she was beautiful, we must believe the world is full of kind, good, loving people who always help others, and that the world is full of justice and fairness, and so it will be. Currently, our government's a mess. Women's reproductive rights and voting rights are in peril, but we know what we have to do. We take any anger we have at the injustices happening around us and we direct it toward a purpose. We are at least as powerful as a houseplant. Therefore, we can manipulate reality in our favor and in the favor of others. The monks know this. Eastern religions know this. They use the quiet, persistent, non-violent power like the houseplant to create your reality. Western religions have to embrace this too. Jesus preached non-violence. We have a responsibility to use this knowledge, and we were all born white here, and to use our white privilege to help others and help this world and manifest a beautiful new reality. Thank you.
Yay.